This is a burden that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are now promising to eliminate in this country. They've already published a roadmap explaining how exactly their Department of Government Efficiency plans to gut the United States federal bureaucracy. And it's worth taking a look at it, in part because this roadmap helps explain exactly how our government got completely out of control in the first place. And also the reactions from the left are already hysterical. I mean, they're losing their minds at the very thought of a smaller, more efficient government. And it's all pretty amazing to watch. So
in this video, Matt Walsh takes on Elon Musk and Vivek's radical Department of Government Efficiency Doge plan, designed to gut federal bureaucracy like never before. Buckle up, because we're diving into unapologetic truths about bloated government spending, failed institutions, and the hysteria from the left. Let's jump right in.
Musk and Ramaswamy outlined in a Wall Street Journal op-ed this week that the Department of Government Efficiency, or Doge, has a very real chance of succeeding where other efforts to curb government expansion have failed. And that's because of the two Supreme Court rulings that the conservative justices helped secure during Joe Biden's presidency. One of those rulings overturned the so-called Chevron doctrine. That's the doctrine that allowed unelected bureaucrats in government agencies to essentially make laws in certain areas as long as Congress has given the agencies some general authority to oversee those areas. This is a principle that expanded the power of the federal government far beyond what anybody probably realizes. You might remember, for example, when the Biden administration came out and declared that 85 million private sector workers had to either get the COVID shot or wear a mask. There was no law authorizing that. There was no public referendum. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, a federal agency staffed with unelected bureaucrats, just issued a rule one day. They said mask mandates and vaccine mandates fell under their mandate of a workplace safety agency, even though nothing like that had ever been tried before, because it made no sense whatsoever. And incredibly, until the Supreme Court stepped in, some federal courts actually agreed with the Biden administration. The Chevron doctrine made unconstitutional mandates like that possible, along with tens of thousands of other irrational and onerous rules and regulations. Now the Chevron doctrine is gone.
This is a major win for constitutional governance. The left screams authoritarianism at Musk and Ramaswamy, but what they're doing is the opposite, returning power to the people. It's a direct slap to unelected bureaucrats who've held America hostage for decades.
But virtually all of those illegal administrative rules and regulations remain on the books. They're not going to be removed unless the federal government or a federal court takes the initiative and strikes them down, and that's the whole idea here with Doge. Specifically, the Doge plan involves placing legal experts inside government agencies who are aided by advanced technology, quote unquote, that will allow them to apply the Supreme Court's ruling to federal regulations. Doge will then turn over a list of the regulations to Trump, who can cut them instantly with an executive order. That's going to be the process. There's no need for Congress to get involved here. The administrative state has gained a lot of power over the years, and now Doge is going to use those powers to destroy the administrative state. That's the first kind of reform that Doge plans to put in place. It's called regulatory rescissions. The second and third kinds of reform, the more prominent ones, are called administrative reductions and cost savings. This involves shutting down government agencies and firing government employees. And that's really the fun part. That's where it gets fun. As Musk and Ramaswamy wrote in their plan, quote, "The number of federal employees to cut should be at least proportionate to the number of federal regulations that are nullified. Not only are fewer employees required to enforce fewer regulations, but the agency would produce fewer regulations once its scope of authority is properly limited." In interviews, Ramaswamy has made it clear that eliminating entire government departments is on the table. Watch.
Are you expecting to close down entire agencies, like President Trump has talked about the Department of Education, for example? Are you going to be closing down departments?
We expect mass reductions. We expect certain agencies to be deleted outright. We expect mass reductions in force in areas of the federal government that are bloated. We expect massive cuts among federal contractors and others who are overbilling the federal government. So, yes, we expect all of the above. And I think people will be surprised by, how quickly we're able to move with some of those changes, given the legal backdrop the Supreme Court has given.
Now, both Musk and Ramaswamy have previously signaled their explicit support for abolishing the Department of Education in particular, which I obviously support as well. This is a department that has just failed its third audit in a row, which is almost as bad as the Pentagon, which just failed its seventh consecutive audit for its budget of nearly $1 trillion. No one can point to anything, any single thing the Department of Education has achieved, Americans have become dumber and less educated by every metric since the Department of Education was reintroduced in this country back in 1979.
Walsh is dead on here. The stats don't lie. Education has tanked while this department sucks billions of taxpayer dollars. It's beyond time to scrap it. Critics say dismantling it would hurt students, but Walsh flips the narrative. What has it fixed in the last 40 years?
Even the defenders of the Department of Education inevitably end up making this point themselves accidentally. So this is one of the better tweets that you'll see on the subject from somebody on the left who's opposed to gutting the education bureaucracy in this country. See if you can follow the logic here. This was a tweet. Quote, "Oh, by the way, middle schoolers can't read, high schoolers can't write a proper essay, college students can't differentiate a scholarly-based article versus propaganda, and adults can't tell when a picture is AI, but sure, get rid of the Department of Education, LOL." That person eventually deleted that tweet after about 10 million people pointed out that all of those failures have occurred under the watch of the Department of Education. This is an agency that is not fixing any of those problems or any problems. It's taking in billions of dollars, wasting it on administrative costs. Now, obviously, we don't know yet whether Doge will actually be able to eliminate this agency or any other agency. A change that significant would probably require an act of Congress, but it's clear that Doge will clearly push us in that direction. They'll go after other useless government departments too. Recently, Elon Musk reposted this video of the economist Milton Friedman from about 15 years ago, outlining all of the government departments that he'd cut. It's a pretty big clue into the agencies that can expect significant downsizing under Doge. Watch.
I want to just go right down the list quickly and have you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Keep them or abolish them. Department of Agriculture.
Abolish.
Gone. Department of Commerce.
Abolish.
Gone. Department of Defense.
Keep.
Keep it. Department of Education.
Abolish.
Gone. Housing and Urban Development.
Out.
Oh, didn't even pause over that one. Department of the Interior.
Oh, well, but housing and urban development has done an enormous amount of harm. My God. If you think of the way in which they've destroyed parts of cities under the rubric of eliminating slums.
Jack Kemp.
You know, you remember that Martin Anderson wrote a book on the federal bulldozer describing the effect of the urban development. There have been many more dwelling units torn down in the name of public housing than have been built.
Department of the Interior. Your beloved National Park Service.
Well, given that the problem there is, you first have to sell off all the land that the government owns. But that's what you should do.
But it could be done pretty quickly.
It could be done. You should do that. There's no reason for government to own. The government now owns something like 1/3 of all the land in the country.
And that's too much. Should go down to zero.
Should go down to, well, not entirely zero. They ought to own the land on which government buildings are.
Now, whatever you think of Milton Friedman, it's obviously true that if the U.S. government had listened to him a long time ago, we'd be better off than we are right now. Friedman once stated that it's impossible to have a welfare state and open borders at the same time. You can't promise the entire world free stuff and then allow all of them to enter the country. But the government didn't listen to that kind of logic at the time, and now we have states like California, which are completely out of money as they rush to pay the health care bills of millions of illegal aliens. Later on in the video, Friedman outlined his guiding overall principle in determining whether an agency should be dismantled or retained. He explained why he thinks we still need a Defense Department, a Treasury Department, a State Department, for example. And Friedman was using similar principles we can assume that Musk is going to adopt with Doge. Watch.
What are its fundamental functions? Preserve the peace, defend the country.
All right.
Provide a mechanism whereby individuals can adjudicate their disputes. That's the Justice Department. Protect individuals from being coerced by other individuals. The police function.
Right.
And now, this is both the central government and the state and local governments. The police function is primarily local and central.
Right.
And those are the fundamental functions of government, in my opinion.
Now, critics of Doge point out that even if you cut all these departments, the government's still going to be in the red. And that's true. 2/3 of our spending is on entitlements like Social Security, along with interest payments on the national debt. I pointed out before that Social Security is a giant Ponzi scheme that steals money from Americans. It would be far better, obviously, to allow Americans to keep their paychecks invest their own money however they want, rather than having the government plan our retirements for us. But Doge can't get rid of Social Security without an act of Congress. But even given that Doge can't get rid of all government spending, obviously, it could still reduce a huge amount. It can make people's lives a lot less burdensome in the process. And on top of that, some of this spending is just evil. So eliminating it is good for its own sake, even if the relative savings aren't that big in terms of the entire U.S. budget. For example, this is from the Wall Street Journal op-ed that Musk and Ramaswamy wrote, quote, Doge will help end federal overspending by taking aim at the $500 billion plus in annual federal expenditures that are unauthorized by Congress or being used in ways that Congress never intended. From $535 million a year to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and $1.5 billion for grants to international organizations to nearly $300 million to progressive groups like Planned Parenthood. So we're spending billions of dollars to fund propaganda on stations like NPR. We're also paying Planned Parenthood to murder children. That's a pretty big problem. And this is spending that has persisted for a lot of administrations, both Democrat and Republican, even though the vast majority of Republican voters don't support it. It's just well past time to end it. And if Doge could do that just by itself, that would be a major victory. You can tell the left realizes that. They're melting down over the new Doge blueprint already. Here, for example, was a reaction from a guy named Brian Allen, who's apparently been featured in MSN and Yahoo Finance. So you know he's a real credible guy. He says, quote, I'm not exaggerating when I say this could collapse the government within a year. Musk and Ramaswamy just dropped their first Doge roadmap, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. Here's how they plan to dismantle the federal government step by step. Plant Doge loyalists in every U.S. agency, then use advanced technology, probably AI, to identify thousands of regulations to slash across the board. Hand Trump this hit list of regulations and let him rubber stamp their elimination. Gut federal agencies by finding the minimum number of employees needed to function after gutting regulations. Think Musk's 80% staff cuts at X, but scaled up to the entire government. Sounds amazing. I mean, it sounds absolutely wonderful. Yeah, but here he's presenting the Twitter layoffs as a negative. Apparently, this is something of a common perspective on the left, even though it boggles the mind that anybody would think this. Elon Musk fired 80% of Twitter employees, and everybody on the left said Twitter would collapse as a result. It would just be gone. A lot of software engineers and so on said the same thing on MSNBC. None of it was true. Twitter is now a lot better than it used to be. By getting rid of all the bureaucrats and censorship commissars at Twitter, it's about 1 million times more functional and useful. Now, if a top Silicon Valley company has that much bloat, then you can imagine how much bloat the federal government has.
This comparison is brutal and accurate. If Musk could axe 80% of Twitter's workforce and keep it running smoothly, why wouldn't the same logic apply to federal agencies? The hypocrisy is glaring as critics cheer government inefficiency while mocking private sector success.
I mean, it's really staggering. Even a lot of critics of Donald Trump understand that. Here, for example, is John Bolton praising the idea of Doge, although he then says that we should spend all of the savings on bombing foreign countries, which is John Bolton's favorite thing to do. Watch.
Look, Musk may have a big role here. It's not entirely clear what Trump is going to do with this Department of Government Efficiency. If we can save a couple $100 billion, I'd be delighted. We can spend it on the defense budget, which desperately needs an increase.
So this is something we need to look out for, obviously. It's not very productive if we save a ton of money and then use that money to start World War III, as John Bolton really wants us to do. The point is to cut the spending and let Americans keep more of their own money. That's the whole idea. And along the way, we need to eliminate funding for merchants of death like Planned Parenthood and other evil organizations. In Argentina, they've implemented similar wide-scale cuts in government. As a result, their GDP is expected to grow by nearly 10% next year, according to JP Morgan. That's one of the highest rates of growth in the world. This is the kind of growth you get when you destroy needless regulations and government agencies. Like Argentina, we weren't always this bloated and inefficient. As aerospace CEO Jared Isaacman put it recently, quote, take the Gerald Ford class aircraft carriers. The first carrier was awarded in 2008. Construction began in 2009. It was commissioned in 2017. It didn't deploy until 2022 at a cost of $18 billion. The next carrier in the class, the JFK, will take at least 10 years from construction to commissioning and cost $12.5 billion. These timelines are staggering. During World War II, the USA built over 155 carriers in a handful of years. Or for another perspective, these projects run longer than the time from Alan Shepard's first suborbital flight to Neil Armstrong's walk on the moon. So getting us back to mid-20th century levels of government efficiency is a goal the Republicans have had for decades. And now there's a realistic chance that it'll finally happen. It's only been 2 weeks since the election, and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have already gotten to work hiring employees for Doge, outlining their agenda in very clear and direct terms. If and when they succeed, it'll be a lot like the situation in Canada last year. Tens of thousands of federal bureaucrats will stop going to work because they won't have jobs anymore. And other than saving a lot of money and having more freedom, Americans won't notice a thing.
Walsh wraps up by praising Doge's potential to strip away corruption, waste, and propaganda funding, looking at you, Planned Parenthood. He contrasts Musk and Ramaswamy's bold vision with the stagnant inefficiency of past administrations, daring viewers to imagine a government that actually works for them. This isn't just a government overhaul, it's a reckoning. Walsh lays it out clearly. The real question isn't if Doge will work, but how much longer can we afford not to try? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and be sure to subscribe to see more content similar to this one. Take care.